Rosemary and Richard. My dad has one living sibling. Her name is Susan Charmley. She is a nun located at her mother house in Kentucky. And she could not be here, but we're recording this for her. She sent me a prayer that she asked me to read in honor of her mother. It is a Hopi prayer. It says, "Do not stand at my grave and weep. I am not there. I do not sleep. I am 1,000 winds that blow. I am a diamond winds on snow. I am the sunshine on the ripened grain. I am the gentle autumn's rain. When you awaken in the morning, hush. I am the swift rush of quiet birds in circled flight. I am the soft stars that shine at night. Do not stand at my grave and cry. I am not there. I did not die."
Good morning as well. Patrick Charmley, the firstborn, oldest, and I wanted to say a few words about my mother. I also wanted to say thank you to the parish for hosting the opportunity for us to be here together, and in particular, the inspiration and nationality having my mother be to know that you're blessing us all. So just 2 pages. Just to keep us all from being too restless. And so I'll just read these careful words. When I had the chance to be with my dad, and I had the time to review literally hundreds of family photos, I was reminded of many things that I got to learn and witness and be amazed about my mom, Rosemary Charmley. I was reminded of 4 things about my mother that are relevant to the question that I've asked myself, and perhaps we all ask ourselves on occasion about our efforts in life. When is enough enough? 4 points. First, so she started down the path of nursing in her 20s, based on her caring personality and her medical interests, only to put that pursuit on pause in order to raise 4 children. And today you can see the results of her careful efforts in her large, loving family. And she wanted to do greater good. When I was in high school, she felt it was time for her to resume her nursing pursuit. And so she started out with a single college class that I remember, just to gain confidence in herself as an older student amongst all the youngsters that were there. And so she continued on to earn her bachelor's degree in nursing and even a license as a registered nurse, which is, again, an above and beyond. She then served her community as a nurse at the local hospital and senior care programs until retiring 25 years ago. The second point is, my mom had a strong and beautiful marriage to my dad for over 62 years, but it wasn't enough for her to have just her own strong marriage. About 20 years after marriage, my parents became involved in a program called Marriage Encounter, which gives couples the opportunity to strengthen their marriage through better communication. My parents, of course, gained benefits from this program for their own marriage, but they wanted to do greater good. They eventually became local leaders of Marriage Encounter in the Carroll community where we grew up. And they hosted and organized group meetings and discussions for other couples, and thus impacted the marriage bond of their friends and acquaintances over numerous years. Third was her love of music, especially within the church. Her passion for song and the inspiration it provides led her to begin a children's choir. This choir surely must have been the first introduction of music for many, many children, and yet again, her impact was like a ripple and touched the faith and music interests of generations. But it wasn't enough, and she wanted to do greater good. So she used the energy and encouragement from the children's choir to raise funds to purchase a set of handbells for the choir decades ago. Often one bell at a time, as the funds were raised because the bells were so expensive, no doubt. She was the musical director of that handbell choir for many years, and with all her children as members at various times, and my dad as the faithful chauffeur and supporter all the way, unflinching. But it wasn't enough, and she wanted to do a greater good. So at the age of 85, moving to Florida, she wasted no time in purchasing a basic set of handbells and chimes with their own money for use at their church. My mom and dad, with my dad as her constant companion, led that handbell choir until the age of 89, when she retired from that calling. Finally, as the 12th child in a large family with many close relatives, as well as many close friends throughout her life, she had witnessed the sadness and grief that can overwhelm a spouse when the first one passes away. She no doubt extended her sympathy in those occasions, but it wasn't enough, and she wanted to do greater good. After retirement from her nursing career, she started and led numerous grief recovery groups for members of local community in North Carolina, where there were occasions of deep grief and loss. One thing that amazed me after reading 2 of the many recent condolence cards this past year addressed to my dad after she passed were those from the grief recovery groups that led to new couples meeting. Several group members, after losing their spouse, found new love again within the group recovery groups that were facilitated by my mom. 2 of those couples went on to be married, writing about their enduring gratitude to my mom and dad for having changed their lives. So after 90 years, God decided it was enough for my mom. Rosemary Charmley was a role model for many people, and she directly and positively impacted the lives of many people, young and old. After being a faithful Christian, a devoted wife, mother, and friend, God himself must have said it was enough. So, Mom, you were an angel on earth, and now you have earned your wings, and you are with other angels in heaven. It's time for you to rest, because that was enough. God bless you, Mom.
I'm Jim. I wanted to share a few words about my dad. He had a couple of phrases that he liked to refer to when it came to death. He would often say that none of us leave here with anything more than we came into the world with, which of course you probably heard before. He also would often say, none of us get out of this world alive. We all get out of it just one way. True enough. The third thing that he liked to say, which this one didn't become true, is that he had hoped that his bank account would last just until the last check bounced at the undertaker. That didn't come out true. But there were a lot of things that my dad did that were expressions of who he was. And I think those 3 things were ways that my dad would say that each of us leaves a legacy of what we are remembered by. So I wanted to share a few memories of my dad and what that taught me about who he was. First, he very much was a good father and taught that more by example than anything else. He very much provided for his children. He would often often drive the used car, etc., so that he could help put us through school. He would make sure that we had what we needed, even if he didn't always get what he needed. Occasionally, my children accuse me of the same. But that said, at least with my kids, I've said, look, your mom and I can either pay for college or we can pay for counseling, because one of the two you probably will need both. So far, they've chosen college. We'll see if that continues. The second thing my dad often did to teach as a father is he would lead by example in terms of how he cared for us. He would definitely teach us, whether it came to fishing, how to do things in life, how to fix cars. In fact, I remember he was encouraging about that. I was probably 15. We had a number of extra engines because that's where he worked, and I decided one day to take apart an engine, and I took apart the engine and strewed it across each part across of our driveway in Carroll, and decided that night, I told him about it, and he said, well, see if you can put it back together. So I did the next day. The only problem is I ended up with a handful of extra parts that I didn't know what to do with. But Dad actually was quite encouraging about that. Wasn't that discouraged, and I don't know if he ever put it back together properly or didn't, but he encouraged me in the process. That was a wonderful thing. The other thing that he did as a good father was that he was playful. Not always, well, always in interesting ways. He was always joking, and occasionally would, well, you wouldn't necessarily want to play cards with him if you wanted an honest game, but what he would do is he would do fun things that would tease us occasionally. Like, I remember I was probably 5th grade, Bill had a history assignment, and Dad found his book and read ahead, and at the dinner table would talk about all these details of the history of whatever time period it was, as though he was just, sharing what he remembered, even though it was, in fact, he had read the assignment ahead of time and knew exactly what to say. But there were many ways that he taught us to be a good father, and to the extent that I'm a good father today, and sometimes I don't know, but to the extent that I am, it was because I learned from him as an example. The second set of memories I have is him as a husband. And very much like Patrick said, for 60 plus years, he was very faithful to my mom, was very supportive of her, would encourage her to do things, whether it was to go to China to learn about Chinese nursing, or to encourage her to pursue her interests in music, like Patrick had mentioned with the bells, or whether it was just holding her hand. We used to often get remarked by our neighbors that, your parents are the only ones I've ever seen that hold hands while they go for a walk. It's like they just got married, even though they've been married 40 years, 50 years. They were in love for the entire time that they were married. And he was faithful to her and was a steadfast partner. And to the extent that I am, certainly I learned that from him. The third way that my father taught, not in words but in actions, was just as a person. He was incredibly gracious with people that he met. He could strike up a conversation with just about anyone, and they would walk away encouraged by that. And he would also was very diligent in what he did, whether it was working on boats or helping take care of the Trails Committee here in Brevard in Sherwood Forest, or taking care of little details that other people didn't notice. He was amazing at that. And finally, he also was quite faithful. He attended church all the time that my mom did, and even sometimes when she didn't. And while he didn't talk as much about that, and often mom would more so, he was incredibly faithful and observant of all of the things that the Catholic faith has to offer, and more. So in that way, he was an amazing person. So he was a great example as a father. He was a great example as a husband, and a great example just as a person, as a human. And for those things, he will be remembered. And for each of us, we form a legacy of what words would, to his grandchildren, say, you know, we all leave a legacy. What kind of legacy will you leave? We each build that every day. He built a wonderful